Hi everyone, this is Rob Watson, the module leader for TECH3022 social media practice. And this is the fourth overview video, summary video for the topics that we'll cover in this week's lecture, which is entitled Netnography, which basically is taking the ideas that we discussed in the Thinking Sociologically lecture last week and applying them to more specifically to online practice and online work. So it's the idea that we can, how do we make decisions and judgments and use online experience in a way which is we can recognise and we can codify and we can shape for our own purposes. And the idea is fundamentally that online life is not much different than online life. It's derived, it's online and offline are not very different. They're derived from the same kind of human drives and impulses at face value. It would be useful for us to get into arguments and discussions about algorithms and bots and fake news and all those kind of things. But for the moment, we'll focus on what we might look for in terms of, and this is in inverted commas, authentic communication and authentic experience between people. But I fully understand that that's like a minefield in its own right. So what we'll look through to begin with is kind of the idea of virtual communities and how virtual communities can be studied and interact, what the kind of common interactions are within those communities. So they're like communities, face-to-face communities, online communities and virtual communities are driven pretty much by the same kind of generic processes that we looked at last week. You've got to find a perspective on things, you've got to build relationships, there's an emotional content to them. So where do we study, how can we study online life in such a way that it also brings about an understanding of the human nature, the humanistic nature of online communities and online discussions. So we'll look at we'll go back over the generic social processes ideas, and we will consider the way that participation is driven within our online life. I had a very interesting thoughts from one of you guys when you were explaining to me how Twitter enables people to basically slag off Jamie Oliver or celebrity chefs who are on a different kind. It kind of gives license to people to. Now is that an intended or an unintended consequence of the use of social media? And I think we shouldn't be making our mind up beforehand that everything on the internet is wonderful or everything is bad. We should be looking for examples of both positive and negative or progressive and regressive forms of communication which takes place online, so that we can kind of step back from that and kind of look at it a bit more analytically and kind of ask the question, what's going on with this? Why is this being built? Using the framework of the kind of processes that we are aware of, what's happening here? At face value it might look like this, but actually we dig a little bit deeper, we start to see that there's other patterns that are associated with this. So what we're doing is we're grounding our experience in empirical evidence, which is based on field work and it's based on study and it's based on kind of observation, but more than just a kind of cursory glance. What we don't want to do is, kind of make an assumption about something and then race all the way to the end and project onto that assumption a finished product, which would miss out the middle bit, because that's where we really want to be. We want to be investigating the stuff that's in the middle. So we'll look at the idea of how to collect data using social, from social media. We'll look at the idea of how we can report and assess social media use, on what basis it's valuable, why we think it's kind of legitimate to use social media. And in this way, we need to think about how we can use. We're in social media as a computer-mediated environment. We need to use sophisticated techniques for developing and capturing content as well, and how we map that together and how we use that. Fundamentally, though, as with anything, this is about people and the way that people organise their lives, and the patterns that people rely on, and how they change, and how they evolve, and what puts them under pressure and what enables them to change, both through things like technology or cultural input differences. So our objective really is to think about how we get into the engine of change, and what are the key factors that drive a sense of change, and how they're associated with the debate and the discussions that we are looking at that are related to the sugar debate and the refined carbohydrates debate. So lots of stuff for us to think about. I'll try and rattle through it as quick as I can so you can get onto your next session afterwards. The notes are up on the DMU Commons wiki already, so that's wiki.our.dmu.ac.uk, and I'll see you at the lecture on Monday.